evening to everybody. I am Raghavendra Patil, member of Kuvepu Bhasha Bharati Pradhikara of Government of Karnataka. I welcome Dr. Girish Bhatt Ajakkar, President Kuvepu Bhasha Bharati Pradhikara, and all the members of Kuvepu Bhasha Bharati Pradhikara to this webinar. Kuvepu Bhasha Bharati Pradhikara has been organizing a series of online lectures in English to introduce great literary talents in Kannada language to non-Kannada readers. In today's webinar, we are introducing another stalwart Kannada writer from Dharwad, Dr. Vinayak Krishna Gokak. I welcome Dr. Shashidhar G. Vaidya, who will be speaking on Dr. V.K. Gokak and his literary contributions. Dr. Vinayaka Krishna Gokak is one of the important Kannada writers who led the stream of modernism into Kannada poetry for the first time. Dr. Gokak has clearly understood the new experiences and sensibilities prevailing in the post independence period and argued that only a new form of poetry can depict these experiences and sensibilities. He declared to the fellow Kannada poets of 1950s, do not cast the ocean into your six-line stanzas, ಕೊಡದಿರು ಶರದಿಗೆ ಷಟ್ಪದಿಯ ದೀಕ್ಷೆಯನು. Gokak calls such poetry embodying new sensibility as Navya poetry. Dr. Vinayaka Krishna Gokak later formulated an anthology of poetry with new sensibility as Navya Kavitegalu along with Dr. Channa Veerakanvi. This concept of Navya poetry proposed by Dr. Vinayaka Krishna Gokak was later elaborated by another renowned Kannada poet, Gopalakrishna Adiga. Dr. Vinayaka Krishna Gokak was a close associate of Dattatreya Ramachandra Bendre, the most prominent poet in Kannada. He was also an young friend in the informal friends group Galayara Gumpu, started and led by poet Bendre. He was thus trained under the able guidance of Dattatreya Ramchandra Bendre. V.K. Gokak later continued this tradition of training the young ones who were interested in poetry when he was working as the principal of Karnataka College, Dharwad. He started an informal circle of his students who were interested in poetry. That circle of students was called as Kamala Mandala. The members of Kamala Mandala used to meet every Sunday in the house of Professor Gokak and once every 15 days in Karnataka College. The students used to read their poems in the meet, and Dr. V.K. Gokak and Professor S.R. Malgi used to discuss the poems and guide the students. Dr. Gireddy Govindraj, Professor Chandrasekhar Patil, Dr. Sidlinga Patnan Shetty, Govind Jalihala, P.M. Hegde, Revana Siddhappa Horadi, and many others used to participate in these meetings. Out of these talented students, Gireddy, Champa, Patan Shetty, Govind Jalihal, etc., bloomed as great literary talents later. Dr. V.K. Gokak is really the most fruitful literary personality who brought the fourth Jnanapita Prashasti for Kannada for his epic Bharata Sindhu Rashmi. He also very powerfully put forward the Kannada literary talents to project in the national arena. Such literary personality will be introduced to us by Professor Shashidhar G. Vaidya. Sri Shashidhar G. Vaidya, MA PhD, is Associate Professor and Head of the Department of English in BESM College, Badagi. His doctoral thesis is on image of India in the novels of Mrs. C.M. Croker. He has been teaching English language and literature since 32 years. His interests are in Indian English literature, British literature, translation, Anglo Indian literature, and cultural studies. A few of his translated works and others are as follows: Garike, an introduction to life and works of V.K. Gokak in Kannada; Ramadhanya Charite, naming of Ragi as Raghavadanya in English; Heritage series Kaginele, Bada, and Bankapura in English; Parampare Malike, Kaginele, Bada, and Bankapura in Kannada; ದಲ್ಲಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ಇತರ ಕಥೆಗಳು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಟು ಕನ್ನಡ; ಟ್ರೈಬ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ, ಎ pictorial encyclopedia, translation from Kannada to English; Vinoba Bhave, a critical miscellany; essays in honor of Dr. Basavaraj Nayakar; ಶಾಲ್ಮಲ ಮತ್ತು ಇತರ ಆಯ್ದ ಸಣ್ಣ ಕಥೆಗಳು, ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಟು ಕನ್ನಡ; ಸರ್ದಾರ್ ವಲ್ಲಭಾಯಿ ಪಟೇಲ್ biography; translations of select research articles from Dr. M.M. Kalburgi, Marga 1; ನಕಲಿ ವಜ್ರಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಇತರ ಕಥೆಗಳು, ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಟು ಕನ್ನಡ; ಇಮೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಇನ್ ದ ನಾವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ B.M. Croker; ಆನಂದ ಕಂದ, ಎ monograph, translation from Kannada to English; select songs of Sharif Sahib of Sishunala, Kabir of Karnataka, translation from Kannada to English; Gandasare Yachara, translation from English to Kannada; Kanakadasa, a visionary of harmony, and many others. Now I request Professor S.G. Vaidya to deliver lecture on Dr. V.K. Gokak.
Namaste, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your introduction. And I feel myself blessed being introduced by you, such another stalwart from Dharwad.
Thank you.
Honorable President Dr. Girish Bhatt Ajakkala, sir, revered Registrar Ishwar Mirji, and respected executive members of Kuvempu Bhasha Bharati, Bengaluru. Let me thank you all for this esteemed opportunity of sharing a few of my views which I have gathered on my way of understanding Dr. V.K. Gokak, a doyen of Kannada literature. It is really a laudable job of the Pradhikara through which the illustrious writers and poets of Kannada are being introduced to the non-Kannadigas and the non-Kannada world outside Karnataka through this series of webinars. For the past couple of weeks, my dear honored audience, you have been listening to the talks given by the great scholars about the great writers, beginning with Govinda Pai, Mangesh Raya, and till Professor Siddhalingaya yesterday. Now, I am going to add one more talk on Dr. V.K. Gokak. Giving a talk on Professor Gokak is akin to an attempt of a salt doll stooping to measure the measureless ocean. Like the doll, one melts ultimately in the sea of literature produced by this great stalwart. Haveri district, being in the pivotal position of the map of Karnataka, has contributed enormously for the enrichment of Kannada literature and culture. Even to this day, the writers like Ambikara Chaudaya, Kanakadasa, Sarvajna, Sharif Sahib of Shishunala, Santakavi of Satenahalli, Galaganatha, Elavanakatti Giriyamma, V.K. Gokak, S.R. Yakkundi, Mahadev Banakar, Patil Puttappa, and Professor Chandrasekhar Patil are the twinkling stars in the firmament of literature. The ancestors of Professor V.K. Gokak hailed from Gokak town during the days of Sri Vinayakaraya, the grandfather of Gokak. There occurred an all-rain drought in Gokak region. It became hard for Vinayakaraya to feed his family. Hence, he asked the support of the provincial rulers of Miraj. The rulers deputed him to Lakshmeshwar, a small town now in Gadag district, where he got settled as a pleader. Since the family had migrated from Gokak, the place name became attached to the family. Later, the same name became even the pen name of Professor V.K. Gokak. Sri Krishnaraya, father of Vinayak Gokak, was an adopted son of Vinayak Raya. Krishnaraya married the daughter of Panduranga Joyce, who was a high school teacher, and yet he was known more as an astrologer in Savanur. Because of the economic fall of his family, Krishnaraya was forced to leave Lakshmeshwar and go to Savanur. He got settled there as an astrologer. It was in Savanur that Vinayak K. Gokak was born on the 9th August 1909. He completed his primary and high school education at Savanur. He passed his matriculation in 1925 from Majid High School of Savanur. Then he passed his BA degree from Karnataka College, Dharwad in 1929 and continued his studies for his MA at the University of Bombay. As Dr. V.K. Gokak was a highly meritorious student, his professor Akha recommended him for appointment at Ferguson College, Pune, as professor of English in 1930. After 6 years of service in the college, that is in 1936, the Deccan Education Society of Pune sent him to England for further studies. He returned to India with a degree. Soon he was appointed as the vice principal of Willingdon College of Sangli. It was impossible to work there because of the problems hurled on his professional path by his colleagues. Hence, he resigned the post and came back to Dharwad. It was during this period he wrote the novel Samarasave Jivana, that is the first part, Ijodu, that was published there. Shortly after this, he was offered the position of professor in the University of Hyderabad, Usmania University, Hyderabad, where he worked just for 1 year and then went to Visnagar, Gujarat as the founder principal of the college there. The period between 1946 to 49 was a fruitful period in his life. It was during this period he studied voraciously the literature produced by Maharshi Aurobindo. With the inclusion of Baroda state into Mumbai government, he was compelled to leave Gujarat too. He was transferred to Rajaram College of Kolhapur as the principal. He had to face untold difficulties because of his discipline and highly academic attitude, and above all, the anti-Kannada feelings of the localites. Hence, he left Kolhapur to join as the principal of Karnataka College, Dharwad, his alma mater in 1952. It was during this period that he came in close contact with great poetic personality Dr. D.R. Bendre and the circle of friends Gelayara Gumpu in Dharwad. In the year 1958, he presided over the All India Kannada Literary Conference held in Bellary. His speech in this conference opened new vistas and possibilities before the Kannada literary critics and poetry. The very next year, that is in 1959, he was appointed to the post of Director of Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages, now IFLU, at Hyderabad. He remained in the position for 7 years and worked hard for its all round development. Shortly after this, he assumed the position of Vice Chancellor of Bangalore University and brought many improvements in the examination system, administration, and syllabi formation. In the year 1970, he was appointed as the director of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Simla. During this, during his stay there, he was highly influenced by the ice-capped Himalayas. Then he was invited to the post of Vice Chancellor of Satyasai Institute of Higher Learning, a deemed university at Puttaparthi. Thus, starting his career as a professor of English in Ferguson College, he rose to the position of principal, acharya, and paramacharya in the academic world. Being associated with a number of educational institutions, he gathered an in depth experience and emerged as an immaculate educationist. He contributed to the field of education by concentrating on bringing the value based education system, moral and spiritual dimensions to the higher education. Knowing his experience and in depth knowledge of various stages and phases of educational process, the government of Karnataka constituted a committee to formulate strategies and action plan for the integrated development of Kannada language and culture. Professor V.K. Gokak was appointed as a chairman of the committee. He submitted the report of the committee in the year 1980, in the execution of which it assumed the form of a campaign. Thus, he played a vital and pivotal role in getting the exalted position to Kannada language in the matters and machinery of administration. His name was enshrined in the heart of Kannada people. As far as his contribution to the world of letters is concerned, Professor Gokak wrote extensively in almost all forms of literature in Kannada. He composed his works since the days of Navodaya, Renaissance, to Navya, modern period. Hence, the study of his works is highly rewarding one, as it offers an in depth knowledge of various times and forms of his lifetime. The body of literature produced by Professor Gokak is akin to a dense forest that presents variety of flora and fauna. His works reflect his experiences of pleasure and pain, colorfulness and calamities, famines and fastidious achievements. The works, which are replete of such plentiful experiences, automatically choose their own forms and norms of presentation. Professor Gokak happens to be a man of poetic flair, a man of emotional attitude to the ambience. Hence, his works automatically assume the poetic form and employ poetic elements and devices. Even his prose works many times emerge as prose poems. He has enriched Kannada literary treasury with more than 60 jewel like works of glowing qualities. As far as poetical works of Professor Gokak is concerned, he has published 22 collections of poems, uh, a brief survey of which I would like to present before the audience. The first one is Kalopasaka, which was published in 1934. It consists of 6 long poems wherein the theme, thought, and content are supplementary to one another. This collection reveals the diverse fields or areas of interest of the poet, ranging from love and religion to philosophy and spiritualism. His second work, Payana, which means travel, was published in 1937. This book consists of the poems written between 1925 to 35. Erotic elements, affection, love of motherland, and devotional elements are the themes employed by him in these songs. He holds that this life itself is a journey. Balu and Balena Guttu, that is, life and secret of life, are the important poems which disseminate the message that the essence of life is achieving the success through accomplishments. ಸಾಧಿಸುತ್ತ ಜಯಿಸುವುದೇ ಬಾಳುವುದರ ಸಾರವು. His next collection, Samudra Geetagalu, was published in 1940, Songs of Sea. It gathers his experiences of sea voyage to England, and those experiences promoted him to compose the songs. One comes across his desire for expression of novel sensibilities and novel experiences of the voyage in these songs. There were the years when he undertook the journey to England for higher studies. In fact, these songs envisage the Renaissance poetry, that is, Navodaya, and Navodaya style of poetic composition. Here are some lines culled at random and roughly translated for this lecture. ಬೇಡೆಯ ಬಂಧಗಳ ಬಂದಿವಾಸ ಬರೆದದ್ದೇ ಬಂಧುರವಾಗಬಹುದು, ಸಾಕಯ್ಯ ವೃತ್ತಗಳ ವರ್ತ ನಿನ್ನ ಮಣಿತವಿರಲಿ ಸಮುದ್ರದ ಕುಣಿತದಂತೆ. Enough with the present life of structure. Whatever one writes now may become structure in the future. Be you flexible like the dancing sea waves. And further, as Professor Raghavendra Rao quoted a few moments back, ಕೊಡದಿರು ಶರದಿಗೆ ಷಟ್ಪದಿಯ ದೀಕ್ಷೆಯನ್ನು. Attempt not to arrest the sea in the torture of six-lined binding structure. Thus, the idea that a poet needs free verse pattern for the complete expression of such indomitable and vast experiences, deep experiences. This collection became a milestone in the way of his experimentation. Next collection, Trivikramara Akasha Gange, which was published in 1945, A Milky Way of Trivikrama, is written in Champu style. Champu is a mixture of prose and poetry. He calls it a modern Champu. Professor Gokak himself calls it somewhere a modern Champu. The poem is regarded as an autobiographical one. The persona of the poem is always associated with the poet himself. Pain, separation, fascination towards a young girl, death, and many other diverse experiences of the poet are reflected in this work. Next collection, Abhyudaya, was published in 1946, Prosperity, which can be roughly translated. This collection is imbued with the themes of exploitation, Marxism, sympathy for the suffering, and Aurobindo philosophy. Next collection, which consists of the songs, was published in 1949 to 50. This collection contains the songs which reveal the influence of Sri Aurobindo. Apart from the darshana of the Maharshi, there are also songs which are replete of themes of patriotism. The songs like Shishyasteham, Paraprakriti, Chaitya Purusha are all full of discussion and influence of Aurobindo philosophy, which is characterized by the idea of Parashakti, dedication, aspiration, and God's grace. The next collection, Navya Kavitagalu, which was published in 1950, Modern Poems, this collection brought him the fame as a propounder and sponsorer of modern poetry, that is Navya. Each song of this collection is marked by the staunch desire of the poet for modern thought and modern ideas, with novel experimentations, especially in the matter of manner of composition. They stand poles opposite to the traditional idea of poetic creation. Many poems employ prose rhythm. Professor Gokak gives a detailed description of the nature and features of Navyakavya, modern poetry, in the preface to this collection. The collection that was published in 1950 was Ugama, origin. The poet calls these poems the poetic essays, Kavya Prabandhas. This collection gathers the poet's sensibilities in respect of the place of origin of the river Krishna. The songs included in this collection are supposed to have been composed when he had participated in a conference which was held at the place of origin of the river Krishna. Next collection, Bala Deguladalli, in the Temple of Life, which got published later in English version 2. This collection is full of imagery of various ways, stage, and phases of life. Contemporary social consciousness and tendencies and trends of the age get reflected sumptuously in this collection. These poems are full of imaginary situations, dramatic elements like dialogue forms, soliloquies, asides. They also discuss the personal philosophies of the individuals and the principles cherished by the people, like a poet, a mystic, a dreamer, an artist, a politician, an orthodox conservative, a modern social reformer, etc. Professor S.V. Parmeshwara Bhatta has rightly observed this work. Quote, sometimes this work appears as a lyric, sometimes it appears as a narrative poem, within parenthesis, epic, sometimes as melodrama, sometimes as satire, sometimes as highly suggestive, sometimes as biography, sometimes as history of humanity. Thus, this novel work has achieved the status of an epic. Unquote. Thus, this book is highly complex and a unique one. There are lines which we can quote uh, from this collection. ನಂಬದಿರು ಒಂದೇ ಧರ್ಮ ಒಂದೇ ಮಾರ್ಗವನು ಇಂಬುಗೊಡದಿರು ಯಾವುದೊಂದೇ ಶ್ರುತಿಗೆ ತೆಕ್ಕೆ ಬೀಳಾಗಸಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ದರ್ಶನಗಳಿಗೆ ನೆಲವೇ ಒರೆಗಲ್ಲೆಂಬ ಶ್ರದ್ಧೆ ಬರಲಿ. Believe not in any particular way of any particular religion. Give not thy ear to any particular scripture holy. Embrace the empyrean high sky of all philosophies. Let there dawn the faith that the earth alone is the whetstone. And the next collection, which marks a definite deviation and also which brought Sahitya Academy Award to Professor V.K. Gokak, is Dyawa Prithvi, which was published in 1957, Heaven and Earth. In this collection, it appears that, keeping aside his desire for experimentation, Professor Gokak treads the path of pleasant moderation. This book, which is regarded as a fragment epic by the critics, consists of two parts entitled as Nirada, the cloud, and Ilagita, song of the earth. Professor Gokak has employed his experiences of voyages by air and water. The first part, Nirada, describes the beauty and several shapes and several forms that the clouds get revealed to him when he was traveling by air. It consists of 10 Asalus sprouts. Shelley, like Shelley, he views the cloud as constructive as well as destructive force. And the second part, Song of the Earth, Ila Gita, gathers various Vedic mythological concepts as also the concepts from the Bhagavad Gita. It consists of 11 songs. So, this union of 10 and 11, that is 21. Perhaps Professor Gokak was well versed in Rigvedic studies, wherein there is a statement there is a mantra in Purusha Sukta which says Trisapta Samidha Krata. That means 21. So this first section 10 and second section 11 together forming 21 is quite symbolic too. This section, that is Ila Gita, begins with the view of the poet that this earth itself is a fine work of art, reminding one of Keatsian idea of poetry of the earth is never dead. Since this section gathers the poet's experiences of journey by aeroplane, it is both poetical and practical at once. We can trace the influence of the English writers like Shelley, Eliot, Herbert Reed, and others, as Professor Gokak was an ardent student of English literature. This section ends with the view that in the evolution of man, the earth alone is the base. ಮರ್ತ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತು ಗೆಲ್ಲು ಮರ್ತ್ಯವೇ ವರೆಗಲ್ಲು ನೆಲವೇ ಆಧಾರ ನೆಲವೇ ಆಧಾರ. Be victorious by finding firmness on the earth, for the whetstone is the very earth. The only base is the earth. The only source is the earth. Thus, there is sublimity of imagination in this poem, which envisages progress of man when man learns to look upward towards the sky and clouds while remaining firmly earthbound. Next work, Urnanabha, which was published in 1961, The Spider, is a collection of 49 songs. This collection symbolically prognosticates the future of humanity. There is also a suggestion of warning too. These poems express the religious idea in the modernist tone that God is the source behind all operations of the universe. This collection emerges as an important work in the growth of modernist consciousness in the poet. Next collection, Kashmira, is a collection which stands altogether on a distinguished pedestal because of its unique structural aspects. The poet himself calls it poetic essays, Kavya Prabandhagalu. In this collection, one comes across the experimentation of the poet with poetic structure. He offers natural as well as historical world of pictures in this work. The songs included in this collection provide precise information regarding various religions, local history, important individuals, their exploits, etc. And these elements are interwoven in a unique way of expression, which is a blend of prose and endearing poetry, assuming the attire of narrative songs and narrative prose elements. Indilla Nale, if not today, tomorrow, published in 1965, is another collection of poems which is written in the form of Champu style again. This work gathers the poet's experiences of his visit to the States. He analyzes the American lifestyle and structure and compares it with our own. The stories of success and failures of Americans, the idiosyncrasies of American family system, and the unlimited, luxurious, amorous life are all documented quite meticulously by the poet. Will it be the same situation in India, if not today, at least tomorrow? Is the doubt that seems to hover over the mind of the poet. And uh, let me quote some lines from the poem, from the collection. ವಾರದೆಲ್ಲೆಡೆ ಮಿಡಿತ ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಕುಣಿತ ಕುಡಿತ ತನ್ನ ಕಾದಲರೊಡನೆ ಕಾಮಲೀಲೆ ಗೃಹಸ್ಥಾಶ್ರಮೀಯವನು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿ ದಶೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಚಾರಿಯು ಮದುವೆಯಾದ ಮೇಲೆ, which I have roughly translated. Hard work and labor throughout the week. In the weekend, drinking and dancing at peak. Union with one's beloved before marriage. Married is a student even before the age. Bachelor will he be soon after the marriage. Thus, these poems give the picture of contemporary American life when he visited. Next one is Trishankuvina Pradnya Prabhata, Trishanku's Dawn of Consciousness, published in 1966. In this work, Professor V.K. Gokak makes use of, as he himself says, makes use of, unquote, makes use of the mythological story of Satyavrata and thereby symbolizes it to the predicament of contemporary man or humanity, unquote. Satyavrata lived happily with Satyavrate in Ayodhya. He was plunged into sorrow after the death of his dear wife. Hence, he wished to go to heaven along with his human body, which is against the law of nature. He sought the help of sage Vishwamitra. The sage blessed the king with the fruit of half of his penance. Vishwamitra's penance shot the king towards heaven, but he was stopped in the midway. Hence, Vishwamitra created another heaven for Trishanku, which is known as Trishanku Swarga even to this day. Then Vishwamitra was also warned by the Creator, Lord God Brahma, and he went to perform severe penance again. The work ends with the message that the very fall becomes the foundation stone of the edifice of the growth and prosperity. Thus, this work foreshadowed the epic Bharata Sindhurashmi, the epic which Professor Gokak composed later and was honored with the Jnanapitha Award in 1991. Thus, through this work, Professor V.K. Gokak comments on the predicament of the contemporary man, especially Indians. We, the modern Indians, are not completely westernized. In other words, we are devoid of complete scientific attitude and outlook, nor we don't have complete faith, or we don't have roots in our own culture. And therefore, modern man's position is akin to that of Trishanku. On the other hand, sage Vishwamitra misuses his supernatural powers gained through severe penance. He does it because of his sense of hatred and vengeance on Vasishtha. But his attempts fail and he has to resume his penance through the successful similes and metaphors and the mellifluity of language and other poetic devices. The work emerges as an evidence of Professor Gokak's intrusiveness into ancient myths and inventiveness in making them meaningfully relevant to the contemporary human society in general and Indian society in particular. Punya Bhumi, published in 1966,
ವಿಕಾಸ್ ಒಂದು ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಇದು ನಡೆದ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ.
The Hallowed Land
ಓಕೆ.
is collection of 26 poems dealing with Sthala Puranas with historical elements associated with pilgrim centers like Udupi, Pajaka, Ayodhya, Tirupati, Ganagapura, and many other places from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. The uniqueness of the work is that these Sthala Puranas are composed in the form of poems. And Professor Gokak also makes some comments which can be termed as satires on the commercialization of devotion, novel touch to emotion, and a powerful blend of language, style, and expression are the important features of this collection. Bhavaraga and Chintana are the other two collections. And Konaya Dina, the last day, was published in 1979. This is a collection of poems which discusses the last day in the life of Basavanna, a Veerashaiva saint. The Sharana movement, the tragedy that befell on the city of Kalyana, are described in moving manner. The credibility of language in capturing the picture of the 12th century are noteworthy elements in this work. The next work is Bhagavata Nimishagalu, published in 1972, The Moments of Bhagavata. This collection reveals the growth of novel consciousness and sensibilities and also further development in the process of experimentation with thought, theme, and mechanic making up of the poet V.K. Gokak. The poems included in this collection have embraced the free meter and narrative form interspersed in the lyrical elements. These poems present the pictures of mythological circumstances and situations with their symbolic aspects of meanings. They offer subjects like creation of the universe, goodness of human life, fruition of married life, grahastha dharma, socio-political values, and Indian cultural and philosophical values. Next collection, Simla Symphony, is a book which consists of 23 poems which are written by Professor V.K. Gokak and his wife Srimati Sharada Gokak. There are two parts in this book. First part deals with the description of scenery and the seasonal changes that occur in Shimla, as these were written during the stay in Shimla as the director of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies in Shimla. They are imbued with the beauty of the white-capped Himalayas. The themes of these songs are maturity of the poet's vision and attitude towards life and mysticism. Then Parijata Dadiyalli, Under the Parijata Tree, was published in 1977. It is a collection of songs written since 1931 to 77. In all these, all in all, there are 70 representative songs. A meticulous reading of his poetry reveals the growth of the graph line growing upward in the matters of themes, technique, thought, and stylistic elements. Now we come to the crown of Gokak's creation, Professor Gokak's creation, Bharata Sindhu Rashmi, which was published in 1982. This is one of the three epics of modern times. The other two are Ramayana Darshanam of Kuvempu, published in 1945, and Professor S.S. Bhushnur Mutt's Bhavya Manava, published in 1983. The epic Bharata Sindhu Rashmi consists of 12 cantos, within parentheses, books, and 39,000 lines. It is written in 2 volumes. It comprises of complex metrical patterns. There are around 200 characters that walk and strut on the stage of this epic. They all revolve around the protagonist Vishwamitra or Vishwaratha. Roughly, these 200 characters may be classified into six dominant groups broadly. Number one, sages or rishis. Number two, heroes. Number three, common people. Number four, women. Number five, villainous ones. Number six, young generation with new ideas. Bharata Sindhurashmi is a jewel in the crown of Kannada Bhuvaneshwari, as it is also a preeminent one among the epics of Indian languages. It unrolls before the readers a pack of stories culled from prehistoric ages. It is a magic mirror that reflects and reproduces before the readers the social, political, cultural, and spiritual values cherished by the people of those times and climes. Because a true epic must be an offspring of history. Dandi, in his work Kavyadarsha, writes, Itihasa kathodbhutam mitaratva sadashrayam chaturvarga phalayattam chaturodattanayakam alankritam asankshiptam rasabhava nirantaram sargairanati vistirnaihi shavyavrittai susandhivi. An epic must constitute a story drawn from history. Its hero must be a noble man who struggles for his fellow men and fellow creatures. It is a relation of events grouped around a central theme of racial interest in particular and of human interest in general. The epic discusses the growth of humanity through the Manvantaras. A Manvantara is a period of long many years because Amarkosha says that a Manvantaram tu divyanam yuganam ekasaptatihi. These all these yugas should turn once 71 times. That becomes a Manvantara, etc., etc. By the time of Vaivasvata Manvantara, the four Purusharthas also got established. A tolerable pattern of human life got established. At such a point of time, Vishwamitra appears on the scene. By the time there appear racial conflicts between the Aryans and Dashus and other rulers. Seeing the wars, Vishwamitra gets highly disturbed. He hankers for peace, prosperity, and unity of humanity. Born in a Kshatriya family, he indulges in deep penance and uses that penance for the for the welfare of the world. But he stumbles down in the middle because of the entry of Menaka and resumes the penance. Thus, the epic shows the growth of the character of Vishwamitra. He passes through the stages of inner consciousness, wherein we see enough of Aurobindo's philosophy, which is employed by Professor V.K. Gokak. He passes through the stages of inner consciousness and reaches the supermind and enjoys the bliss. The attainment of bliss is possible only through the union of Sat Chit Ananda. He hankers for the happiness of humanity. Then he contributes for the unity of nation. Having attained the state of Vishwamanava, universal man, thus the epic is well lived in historical growth of humanity. The message of the text is fruition of individual life, restructuring the collapsed human society, historical vision of the growth of modern India. The text emerges as a glowing mirror in which reflects the essence of humanity. By doing so, the work becomes relevant in the contemporary context when the individuals are growing into impregnable islands. The character of Vishwaratha or Vishwamitra emerges before the readers as an eminent administrator, a prolific poet, an indomitable brave fighter, a great lover of mankind, and above all, as a rishi with the characteristics of a superman. Thus, this glorious work has imbibed into its womb, all constituent elements necessary to designate it as an epic. Professor Gokak has employed the complex metrical structures, style, technique, figures of speech, suggestion, etc. in the book. Begin with the flashback technique. The rhythmic movement of the story is akin to that of a rocking wooden horse of Kinnada, bending below slowly and then prancing upward, always continuously. There are rhymes, internal rhymes, detailed descriptions, and delineations of characters, dramatic elements, lyric features, metaphors, and word pictures which capture the readers. Here is the one felt at random. ಕಟಿಗೆ ಕಟಿ ಹಿಂದಾಗಿ ಮೈಗೆ ಮೈ ಮುಂದಾಗಿ ತುಟಿಗೆ ತುಟಿಯೊಂದಾಗಿ ಸವಿಯುತ್ತಿದ್ದವು ಜೇನು. Standing face to face and back to back their hips, being one, they drank the honey from lips to lips. As far as linguistic experimentation is concerned, Professor Gokak employs the mythological images sumptuously. His addition of Kannada case endings, pratyayas, to English words, formation of new words, and use of or even reuse of the obsolete words or indigenous words, Deshi padas, proverbs, all appear to be the repositories of powerful influence of this work. Now we go to the sweeping survey of prose works. Prose is supposed to be the whetstone of the poets. Gadyam Kavina Nikasham Vadanti. So says Bana. Professor Gokak is a master of prose also. There is variety and plenty in his prose writings too. His prose works range from short story to literary criticism and aestheticism. For convenience of study, the body of his prose writings may be classified into 6 groups broadly. Travel literature, number 1. Number 2, plays. Number 3, essays. Number 4, novels. Number 5, literary criticism. And number 6, topical writings. Samudrada Achayinda and also Samudradhichayinda, published in 1938 and 1960, respectively, form his travel literature. And coming to the plays, there are all in all 4 plays written by Professor V.K. Gokak. First one is Tulasi. Tulasi or Munidamari, Angry Devil, which was published in 1935. This is a one-act play which presents the tragic events that take place in the family of Tulasi and her mother. Tulasi is an innocent girl who falls a prey to Sudhakar Raya, who posed as a social reformer. It is also a story of her repentance. There is enough interest aroused in the dialogues of the play as it employs the North Karnataka dialect. Next play is Jananayaka. The Leader was published 1935. This is a play in 4 acts. The play presents the problem of endowment, Jagir system, as it was written during the period of colonial rule. It holds up the mirror to the contemporary social inequalities, exploitation, and cruelties. Professor Gokak, hankering for a democratic setup and life and social reform, fills or he has charged these ideas into such works. It also presents, this work also presents the audience, presents before the audience the revenge at its cruelest and callous form. The public servant Desai and his cunning nature, and his clerk Sannatamanna, and the suffering of the virtuous people like Bhimanna, Ramanna, and Siddharama Shetty all move the minds of the audience. Mechanics of the playwriting like dramatic irony, sharp and curt dialogues, well-knit plot construction go a long way in holding up the evidence to the classical taste of Professor Gokak. The message of the play seems to be that truth is untarnishable, and truth alone wins in the end, in spite of all the difficulties hurled on the path of the practitioners of the truth. Next play is Yugantara, Transitional Age, which was published in 1947. Written in the year of independence, the play presents political, philosophical, social, and socialist issues face to face. There is an undercurrent of progressive ideas too in the play, which presents before us the story of Kishore Chandra and Rukmini, and also Kanti Chandra and Rohini of Madurai, and also the story of the girl Mrinalini, who believed in Marxism and held the view that Marxism alone is a panacea for all the social evils. She hated the social institution of marriage so severely that she always used to decline the marriage. But ultimately, she yields to the tender hearted poet Kosalendra and finally succumbs to happy married life and motherhood. The message of the play is that kindness, sympathy, happiness are the very forms of God. There is a journey of characters from incompleteness to completeness. The last play is Vimarshaka Vaidya, Doctor of Criticism, 1947. It is a drama of a rare irony on the contemporary literary scene. The contemporary literary tendencies of practicing writers are held up to the laughter. Many writers that were writing in several genres and metrical forms are imagined as characters in the play. Dr. Dinakar Raya, who obtains a degree from Russian University in criticism, opens a clinic to counsel and treat the literary patients. Depending on the seriousness of the literary disease, he treats and recommends the intellectual elixir to them. The scenes in the play evoke irresistible laughter. The message of the play is that for a literary practitioner or a writer, knowledge of different literatures and languages is very essential. Thus, in all these plays, Professor Gokak introduces variety of themes, thought, and sensibilities. There is a welding together of realism, idealism, intellectualism, and spiritualism. Professor Gokak uses his skill of writing these powerful plays as an instrument of social criticism. His essays, Chaluvina Niluvu, there are only two collections, and Chaluvina Niluvu, which was published in 1961, and also Jivana Pathagalu in 1959. Jivana Pathagalu is in the epistolary method. It is in the form of epistles, letters, and these essays give enough commentary on life and various situations of life. Novels. Samarasave Jivana, published in 1953, Harmony Alone is Life, is a novel that assumes the epic canvas. It emerges as an avatar of experiences of more than 2.5 decade of years. It consists of 6 parts, namely Ijodu, Odd Match, published in 1935, Antasattva, The Essence, published in 1944, Preetiyamba, Preetiya Yogamaya, Yogamaya of Love, published in 1949, Yeralita, Ups and Downs, published in 1949, Samudrayana, Sea Voyage, 1953, Nirvahane, Conduction, 1953. The plot, construction, characterization, setting, and narrative manner are highly complex as it essays to capture the vicissitudes that occur in the life of the people of 4 generations in the backdrop of local and foreign settings. The novel sets out to narrate the story of growth of Narahari's character in general. It intends to gather the idea that absence of misunderstanding and rise of harmony are the very formulae that cause the happiness to descend in one's life. In this process, amorality, lack of understanding, and encounters of individuals with different cultures and natures, life may turn into a happy garden or a fire pit filled with splintering embers. The novel is a saga of life of Narahari Kusuma, Vishnu Pramila, Shinu, Sushila, and Alice. The novel foregrounds the discussion on love and lust. Lust in the context of individual life motivates one to go in search of novel moralities. We come across the qualms for modernity and contemporaneity, mysticism and spiritualism becoming stronger and stronger along the narration. The total fabric of the narratology, story and a narratology steer the readers towards progressive ideas and a thirst for formation of modern society remaining out of the periphery of caste and religion based on humanity and humanity alone. It is, in its magnanimity, the novel is comparable with that of the novels of Tolstoy, Fielding, Falstaff, etc. Literary criticism is also a big body which Professor Gokak has produced. His body of writing, beginning from 1935 to 1985, Professor Gokak has authored around 11 works on literary criticism. In all these works, he introduces the principles of literary criticism, their applicability, scope, limitations, etc. In doing so, he dwells upon Indian critical as well as the Western critical theories and the thinkers. Apart from this, he has enriched the world of Kannada criticism with his method of applied criticism and many new ideas in respect of epistemology, aesthetics, etymology, morphology, etc. While discussing his critical ideology, he underscores the point that in order to evaluate and judge Indian literature, there is a need to develop our own standards of criticism and critical jargon. Repeatedly, he brings in the philosophy and literary concepts of Sri Aurobindo and emphasizes that a poet must have his own darshana or vision. A poet must be a rishi, he must be a seer. That is why, again and again, Professor Gokak refers to this quality of rishi in the poetry. And our Indian aesthetics also say, Nan rishi kurte kavyam. All such ideas get reflected amply in his works like The Poetic Approach to Language, published in 1952, English in India, Its Present and Future, published in 62, D.R. Bendre, Poet and Seer, published in 1970, Sri Aurobindo, Seer and Poet, 1973, An Integral View of Poetry, 1975, The Concept of Indian Literature, published in 1979. In this way, through all his critical essays, he laid a firm foundation for modern Kannada criticism. As he was a spokesman of Renaissance, progressive and modernist Navodaya, Pragatishila, Navya movements, he has evaluated the stages of growth through survey and incisive observations of his own. There is a unique balance. There is a unique balance in his critical writings. There is a unique balance in his critical writings. Topical writings are also there in the corpus of Professor Gokak's literature. Arpana Drishti, published in 1973, Angla Sahitya needed the Spurti, inspiration given by English literature. Indina Karnataka, published in 1945, Today's Karnataka. Vishwamanava Drishti, published in 1971, Vision of Universal Man. A collection of essays on Basavanna, Sarvajna, Tagore, Aurobindo, Poetic Vision, etc. And fifth one is Sri Satya Sai Darshana, a collection of 5 articles. In all these works, which are highly complex ones, we can see his attitude for research contemplative nature, rationality, philosophical approach, creativity, and above all, varied interests. Professor Gokak was a prolific writer in English too. Apart from being a great poet of Kannada language, Professor Gokak wrote extensively in English. The list of his works is fairly long to include all them here. Some of them from the list are already discussed in the following. Discussed. The following are some of them: The Song of Life and Other Poems, The Life's Temple, In the Life's Temple, Kashmir and the Blind Man, Narahari, the Prophet of New India, In Defense of Jesus Christ and Other Avatars, India and World Culture, Some Aspects of Hindu Culture, Golden Treasury of Anglo-Indian Poetry, etc. All these works have been extensively written and commented upon by the frontline critics like M.K. Naik, G.S. Samu, Dr. D.R. Bendre, and S.M. Punekar, etc. They are full of praise for Professor Gokak in respect of his erudition and excellence. Professor Gokak was a multifaceted personality. He was a poet, administrator, a thinker, a critic, educationist, a relentless globetrotter, a visionary, a philosopher, a seer, and above all, an immaculate human being with illimitable love for humanity. With these words, I have tried humbly to capture a glass full of water from the sea of literature of Professor V.K. Gokak. I thank once again the honorable executive members of the Pradhikara, the president, the registrar, and the technical staff, and Professor Raghavendra Patil, who has introduced me with great affection. Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Shasidhar. You have given us a detailed and lucid account of persona and literary contributions of Dr. V.K. Gokak. It was imbibed with your deep understanding of literature of Gokak. You have really created a deep interest in all of us about the literary importance of Dr. V.K. Gokak. I extend my hearty thanks to you. I express hearty thanks to Dr. Girish Bhattajakar for having organized such a meaningful series of webinars. I also express thanks to all the members of Kuvempu Bhasha Bharati Pradhikara and all the audiences who participated in this session of webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.